welcome to another episode of Thought That Get Results. I'm Reverend Webbo Herbert, and as per usual, we're here every Tuesday evening with something that at least we think is of community interest and or of some concern. And if you think that you have something which fits into that category, you'd like to find out how you can be a part of the program, well, why don't you drop us a line? Address it to the Let's Talk program in care of Vaughan Radio, P.O. Box 195, Charlestown in Nevis. Or give us a call. Our numbers are 1-869-469-1616 and or 1700. And by the way, those will be the numbers you'll use to be a part of this evening's discussion. Again, thank you all very much for joining us. This is your voice in the community, Thought That Get Results. With regards to your participation in the show, we encourage you to call in on the numbers listed 1-869-469-1616 and or 1700. Here's a suggestion. You have a question or comment, perhaps you can get a pencil, piece of paper, write it down so that you're well organized, and when you're getting on the show, you take as little time as possible so that we can accommodate as many of you as we can. We ask only, first of all, you respect yourselves and then respect others, because we will not accept anything we deem that's not within our broadcast standards, but we encourage you to always be forceful with your point. By the way, you can follow our live video stream of this program on our Facebook page at Vaughan Radio, our YouTube channel at Vaughan Radio. Click subscribe. Thank you all again for joining us, your voice in the community, Thought That Get Results. Tonight, Conrad Nye Liebert, good evening.
Good evening, Webbo, and a pleasant good evening once again to your hard-working staff here at Vaughan Radio, to my colleague and brethren, Mr. Glendale Herbert. Special good evening to you. And as we gather once again, Webbo, in the name of the Lord, to discuss the issues affecting the people, home and abroad, old and young, Webbo, it's a pleasure always for me to be part of this conversation. And I would invite everyone who is in tune to my voice this evening to participate in the program, and call in and put any issue that are affecting you or others on the table, whether it be social, political, or otherwise. Tonight I want to say special good evening to my friends in Toronto, my brethren there in Connecticut, always in tune to the program, and my brethren, Mr. Herbert there in Florida. Good evening. I would invite, the politicians of the day within the Federation and outside the Federation to tune into this program, because I do think there is a bit to learn, and there are a bit to probably we can converse about. Leaders of government, leaders of opposition. A good night to you guys, and as I say, I invite you guys to tune into the program. Webbo, once again, I want to say thank you for having me, and I just want to say, life is one big road with lots of signs, and of course, when you ride into the ruts, don't you complicate your mind and free yourself from hatred and misery. Don't bury your thoughts and put your dreams to reality. Those are words of Bob Marley. And so with that, I say thank you once again, Webbo, for having me.
Glendale Herbert, good evening.
Good evening, Webbo. It's always a pleasure indeed to be here, the voice of Nevis, on radio. It's on Leicester, on the Let's Talk show. This show is the show I've always said of record. It alters policy. It's a talk that gets result. We speak to the issues that are on the minds of the people. We try to at least make a difference, and the record has shown that we have made a difference here. Webbo, I'd like to say good night to everybody here, near and far, in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, and those who are far, who don't have the opportunity or have not had the opportunity to come to a beautiful island and just come back home and just enjoy what we have here. It's the greatest place on earth. I often tell people this is heaven on earth. When they talk about heaven, they meant Nevis, and it's so pristine. It has everything that one that can offer in terms of natural beauty, and I just hope that most of us could appreciate that. But the appreciation comes when you travel, and when you go around the world and you hear about far-flung places, and you actually see them, and you actually measure them up to where you come from. there's not even a close, it's not even a close competition. And so your appreciation grow with experience and exposure. Well, but tonight there are a number of issues that come to mind that I thought we ought to be putting on the table tonight. I thought the music festival is upon us, is coming upon us in a few weeks, short. And a big issue that popped up was the Vice Cartel issue of paying in 1.5 million, reportedly, US dollars that is, which is 4 million EC. Some people think, that was way beyond, and in terms of what we should be spending on one artist, and we have an amalgamation of artists, a number of artists rather, that we pay. And to pay, that type of money to one artist, we are wondering if there is some resonance to that, if there is some give back, after that kind of heavy expenditure. What is it we are getting for that? When we measure that up against the Buju Banton concert, where it is reported that he was paid $500,000 US dollars versus 1.5, 3 times the amount, some people think that's off the charts. I, for one, think it's off the charts, but that's just my opinion amongst many. We have a lot of issues in this country, things to resolve, and money is scarce. And I think we have to begin to think how we spend money in a prudent fashion. So far, they have sold 27,000 tickets reported so far for the music festival. It is also reported that they would have to sell 23,000 tickets alone at $75 for the Vice Cartel to pay for the Vice Cartel, which it's impossible for them to reach, I think. And for the entire festival, they've sold 27 thus far, 27,000. The Cultural Committee reported last week here in Ireland that they have resolved all their debts, the outstanding debts from last year, 50th anniversary. All the people who took part in Culturama and the artists and all the participants, their debts were settled. And we're moving into a new Culturama season, which is upon us within maybe how many weeks? Maybe another 6 to 8 weeks, where we'll be on to Culturama. It's another 6 weeks or so. So that is good news. I only wish that can be done much earlier in the year, so you can incentivize artists to come forward, because they do put a lot of investment into their product that they present. And the product that they present is very important, because at the end of the day, that is how your cultural festivity is being measured. How the exponent of the art and how they pull it off, and they put money into this, they invest. So they need to return on the money, and they need to get the money back in pocket so they can reinvest to the following year. Now imagine a guy put X amount of dollars into his art, or what his production was for Culturama, and now he's just recovering his monies 6 weeks away from Culturama, or 2 months away from whatever the time is. That doesn't give you enough time for the turnaround and to plan out his next, his whatever he intends to, his new production or whatever he or she is doing. So I think they need to tighten up that. I think they need to look at that rather closely and protect the artists and protect the culture. You talk about protecting the culture, but you got to protect the artists, because the artists are the ones who carry the culture at the end of the day. All right. 3. Webbo, PAM, we recognize PAM would have had their convention last weekend, the People's Action Movement in St. Kitts. The elections is upon us in August of 2027, and they're getting their bus ready to move to Rumble. Fine for them. They have announced 2 candidates, one for number 2, constituency number 2, in the name of Nubian, I think, and one for number 4 in the name of Azad Gums. So they've had the candidates to contest. I guess they'll try and contest all seats, all 8 seats in St. Kitts, which is a good thing for the democracy, to challenge. Well, I want to mention something that I found critical, and I think that's something that should be addressed and looked at very closely. It's the fact that when you go to clear something that you order, and everything that we do in this country and we consume in this country come from abroad. So it affects every citizen of this country. And you go to the post office, you bring in something from abroad. Let's say you go to Amazon, and you bring in something from abroad, and it comes in. They're telling you, you got to go online, get your invoice, and think about it very closely, guys. I don't know how the policymakers who would make this kind of policy, look at themselves. You got to download the invoice from Amazon, all right? B, You have to know, and after you done download the invoice, you have to print one for you, and you have to send it to an app for customs. Now, you tell me how many people know how to do this over, especially older persons, over the age of even 50. And they occupy a space of maybe 50% plus of the country in terms of population. And at the end of the day, customs is a recipient of revenues, where revenues are captured, right? Where the country needs revenue to spend, to pay the custom officers them. That's what they use, the taxpayers' money. And, money is collected at the port from the consumption end. It makes no sense to me to put the older folks who can't even use the phone, at least the platforms like this, and to frustrate them. I thought, the ease of business, which has been reported over and over by the World Bank, that we rank among the lowest in the world in ease of business. In the Caribbean, we rank second to last, behind Haiti, in the ease of doing business, 141 thereabout, out of 190 countries around the world. Meaning they make business difficult, right? And you don't tell me you're going to put so much, make it so onerous, or make it so difficult for ordinary people to get their product and to get out and pay your money. Now, isn't it the idea when you're in business, you try to make it easy for the customer? Sometimes I wonder how these people come up with these things. It makes no sense. So I want to know, when the people hear it around the country, when I speak and I say this, I want to see if customers continue this policy. Because it makes no sense to frustrate people like this. These people who make this policy, when they're going to the store, they would like to know when they're going to Rams, for example, as a customer. The Rams tell them, bring your hard copy receipt, print a receipt. You try to make the ease of business easy for the customer who bring in your money. And if you're bringing money to the government coffers, you'll have to make it, stop the laziness and make it easy for the customers, which is the public. So whether that is vexing to me, to be frank with you. You understand? And I'm putting it out there unabashed. That's my position on that. And, I just think it's ass backwards, head backwards, inside out, thinking. And Webbo, lastly, something to report. We'll laugh, a light moment amongst us. The United States, from a political standpoint, we may laugh, but from the United States reported this week that it has cut its trade deficit by 50% because of tariffs in 1 month. Fascinating. I yield.
You have said a lot, Mr. Glendale Herbert. Let's start with the music festival. Once again, we're approaching the annual music festival in St. Kitts. And first it is said it's not geared towards seeing a financial profit, but it's more geared towards stimulating the economy, and therefore it has been reported that last music festival the country seems to have benefited by the influx of millions of dollars. I can't give you a figure, but it's been said. Now you're saying that they're paying Vibes Cartel $1.5 million US. He's seriously overpaid. Seriously overpaid. And sometimes I do wonder if you got to go to jail to develop this kind of hype that comes with the music, especially Jamaican music, because even when Buju came back, I mean, he was like Christ in his second coming. He's a good artist, and I don't particularly enjoy him live. I've seen him live many times. I don't plan to stand up for many hours again to see him, but he's a good artist. But to me, it seems as if when you go to prison for some reason, for whether rightfully or wrongfully being incarcerated, you develop that demand.
You know, scarcity in business, scarcity increase value. You know?
Scarcity increase
Yeah,
value.
it's just a fact in business.
Yes. And that, I suppose, is what underlines or underpins the great demand that sometimes develop when such artists go to prison and come back. Unfortunately, from my point of view, he have not reached to that height that he had before in terms of making good music since he have been released. I'm talking about Buju Banton. But yet he's selling out New York, you know, and other places, you know, and that's great for him. That's great for him. Cartel now, it's got a lot of hypes around him. I mean, he seems to be the biggest thing since sliced bread, maybe since Bob Marley in music today. The young people like his vibe, and again, he have not really produced that kind of great songs that he produced prior to going to prison. But anyway, he's being paid now $1.5 million, according to you. To me, he's very much overpaid. And you have said that they have to sell 23,000 tickets in order to pay him and him alone.
And break even with him alone.
Yeah, and just to break even.
Yeah.
And there are so many different artists, you know.
And they have sold 27 for the entire music festival so far.
And they have sold 27,000.
Yeah.
So just a 4,000.
No. Yeah, but
in excess.
The whole music festival.
Yeah, but what I'm saying, that you're saying that is 4,000 in excess of what it takes
For him.
Right.
And you have to sell his 23 for him too.
Yes. So, well, it looks like they have a problem from a business point of view, but they would say there's no problem. You know,
of course,
the organizers and the Prime Minister and the government people, they would say no problem. But where the problem comes in is when the hospital leak.
Yes.
When the airport leak.
Yes.
When the jailhouse leak.
Yes.
When they are using a jail that is made for 300 people, having nearly 3,000 people.
Yes.
When the hurricane comes and the whole place is being destroyed and there is no savings in the government treasury to facilitate the onslaught of a bad storm. That is where the problem comes in.
Wanton use,
you know,
wastage.
When they cannot build a proper school, Bastia High School have not been rebuilt.
Correct.
You know, over here in Nevis, we want help over here to help us finish. The hospital, the Mondachak, to help us move in any way, as far as I check.
Yeah.
But it is fine for the government point of view to pay one artist 1.5 million.
Naya.
And so we ask ourselves whether or not we got our priorities right here. You know, the government would say, sure we do. Yes?
Sometimes it's amazing, you know, people who put up their hands and they become policy people or policy makers. It's amazing the kind of decisions they make. And how they arrive at these decisions. Irresponsible decisions. Fiscally irresponsible. Especially when you're running an austerity, basically an austerity budget. And you're saying you're not making money. Your major horse that drives the economy has shrunk and is shrinking.
Is injured.
Correct. And you go ahead and you have people who are spending like drunken sailors. I don't know.
So I would say that's fine. I find what I realize around here to a great extent is like they want to junk the electorate, eh?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then they control their minds. You know, through these political campaigns, and so sometimes you see them tend to flush the mind of the people with high valued, according to them, entertainment, bring in all the artists, bring in all the things, you know, make it look nice, dress up the islands, you know, and for the foreigners to see. And then after, school have to open in October when it's supposed to open in September because the roof have not been fixed.
Misplaced priorities again. Misplaced priorities.
The roof have not been fixed. You know, the airport cannot get on the way because the money given to them for the airport being spent otherwise. And so there are real problems in keeping their vibes alive, really, as a consequence of, I'm not saying it's an easy job being at the helm of politics, at the helm of government, but to me, the way they tend to indulge and get the public all worked up and left serious priorities unattended to, it looks to me like that is not what we talk about when we talk about sustainable development. Okay? When we are talking about resilience, that is not what we talk about. When we talk about a safer future for tomorrow, better schools, the ableness to help people in education, going abroad, with the one-time spending of these kind of money, that is not sustainable development. That is not building a resilient country. But the summit conclude today, where everybody in well-dressed leaders, you know, in a massive talk shop.
Yeah.
Massive talk shop. Continually using the word resilience and sustainability.
To me, it seems to me that a lot of these people, they call a lot of words, and they like to have what do you call it? Not a seminar. It's another word they use. You know, it's almost like a seminar. We're going to have a seminar, we're going to have this, and, you know, get to gather around and, you know, dress up and talk and say, there you go. And without any, half of them, most of the folks are talking about, you know, we're going to have a seminar, we're going to have this round table. Lack of experience. And, you know, again, it speaks towards what we see happen day in, day out, and the kind of major decisions that happens upon us. That happens upon the public, meaning the greater good. It's a thought without the greater good in mind. You know, and it's irresponsible for them, you know, irresponsible spending. And if you were to ask them to do the same thing in their household, they would not do it. Because it means, you know, you would be bankrupting yourself. So, you know, you ask about where's the love? You asked about that earlier. I don't know.
Well, and that's it. That's Vibe Cartel, you know, one of the biggest artists moving around today of the Jamaican scene. And so what I would say is for people to enjoy the festival. I would encourage people to enjoy the festival, but I would also encourage people to have their priorities right. If government don't want to have their priorities right, we better, as people, have our priorities right. Otherwise, it doesn't make no sense you go out there and spend all your money, and then tomorrow the household is in great hardship and cannot meet the bank and your various obligations that you may have. And then you have to probably eat a diet that's lead to poor health. And your kids going to school simply, you know, on nothing at all, because you have developed that kind of irresponsibility to yourself, because government constantly exhibits that, and therefore you find yourself in hot water.
So you have a country that you end up with a country with a group of citizens who are following the same, you know, the same irresponsible behavior that is executed at the highest levels, and they're doing it at their level. And what do you have after that? You have to question these things. You know, listen, if you can afford it and you can go, and I encourage everybody to go. It's important, and if you can afford it. But again, I think what people do government should be instructive to how you live. You know, a government spending plan shows their priorities. Where do you emphasize your spending shows your priorities and what's important to you as a government. And as a government, people run the government. So whoever running the governments, it shows your priority. And if it's irresponsible, it shows that your priorities are irresponsible. So, you know, those who people out there who are thinking people and conscious people and people in government, you know, we have to hold folks accountable. You put them in charge, and a lot of times we put them in charge. The people in charge, we think they know because they put up their hand. And when we think they know and they can lead us to the promised land. So we just drop it. We give them the leadership or whatever the case is, and they run with it. And most folks just sit on their hand and wait for the results. And that is what happens. But you have to have an activist country. The country has to become an activist country and say no to a lot of this stuff.
Well, I would suggest we wake up and live.
There you go.
I would suggest we wake up and live, you know, because a lot of us seems to have been relying on some degree of control. And
there was a question, one second, Naya, and there's a question about productivity in this country. And the decisions we're making, and I keep saying, is where you spend your money shows where your priorities are, all right, including your legislation. For example, the passage of Marijuana Act, and for the usage and the growing and all that. We discussed.
Let me get this. Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Evening, sir.
If I can comment on what was raised, the dives. I don't know how we decide that an artist is overpaid, right? If anything obeys the laws of supply and demand, it's those kinds of things, okay? And actually, I would be surprised if the numbers of tickets you said was 27,000 sold. That's for the 3 nights, I guess. That I don't think that's bad at all. Just think of the number, because quite a lot of that is probably people coming in, and just think of the spin-off effects. If in fact every hotel is booked solid, all the flights are coming in full, and there may be extra flights and so on. I mean, you're talking a real stimulus. Okay, so I would say it's worth it. In terms of priorities, yes, it's easy to say that 5 million could have been better spent on things like the hospital or the airport that are leaking. But if the numbers, if those numbers generate much more than the 5 million or whatever is spent on bringing the artists here, then I think it's money well spent. Okay, I mean, it's not just about the outlay, the immediate outlay. You have to look at all the small businesses and so on that benefit from redistribution of it, because really and truly, is a way of redistributing wealth among the populace. So I wouldn't really knock it so hard. With the PAM convention, I don't know if you noticed that those kind of supposedly mass events have been waning in terms of numbers recently. The Labour Party march, low numbers. The Labour Party conference, low numbers. This party conference, low numbers. And we should be drawing conclusions from that. Is it that people are disillusioned with the party politics, with politics and politicians generally. What does that say for things like turnout next election or predictability of the results for next election? If across the board there seems to be waning enthusiasm among the populace. I think the people are saying they're all the same. It's no point. And when you get that kind of malaise and disillusionment, it's not good, I think, for democracy. With regards the summit that they had, well, not the summit, the sustainable island thing that they had. I agree it's a talk shop, but remember there are people who are yet to be convinced that global warming is a clear and present danger, and more so for small island states. There are people who feel that it's cyclical and that the world gonna adjust itself in over a period of time, and we're really worrying about nothing. And really and truly, what we have now is a buzzword. Is buzzwords, just like how at different points in history we've had things like the ascent of women. Ever so often they choose some new buzzword, something to gravitate to spend money on conferences and consultancies and those kinds of things. And I think maybe this one is pretty much like that. Okay? It would be nice to hear your take, if you all have time, I guess, on the Christoph Harbour debacle that's going on here in St. Kitts, if you all are familiar with it. It would be nice to hear what the take is, because we seem to have that problem of investors coming in and using our money when they should be coming in with their money, right? And then making deals that we always end up with the bad end of the stick, right? So it would be nice to hear your comments on that. Okay then.
All right, thank you.
Well, the caller make mention about the stimulus in the economy brought on by the music festival, and I won't doubt that at all. I think that's the purpose it serves from its inception. But the question about the amount that is being paid to Vibes Cartel, I think that is what we're on about, really. And I'm not sure if we can figure it out and do the maths in any precise way to say, well, that extra amount that we pay in Vibe Cartel is going to bring that multiplicity of financial stimulus within the economy and draw a conclusion from that. In a sense, we are saying that amount of money to pay one artist seems to be quite high-handed, really, and it's not like there wasn't stimulus before, it's not like if he wasn't here there wouldn't have been plane loads and everything else. Yes, he might have brought in some people, but can we really say that it's worth it in terms of financial benefit by paying one artist, like the leading artist? Well, it's not last year, but once upon a time, as you say, they paid Buju Banton 500,000. This one is 3 times that.
Correct.
You know what I'm saying? I'm not sure if Buju Banton came during music festival though.
He did.
But what I'm saying, it's I would lean on the side that seems to be an exorbitant amount to pay one artist, given the numbers of tickets that has already been sold, given the number of tickets that have to be sold to break even with his expenditure in particular. So to me, it is still a conversation.
And it's a good conversation. We cannot exact, the exponential effect, meaning in terms of what we capture in terms of dollars, where the flights coming in, rooms, occupancy, and all that sort of thing. We cannot exact it. And we don't know if the vice cartel phenomenon is bigger than the Buju Banton phenomenon, for that matter. They both were in jail for a number of years, and Buju had a great bounce the same way, right? So they were, but he's been paid 3 times the amount. That's in question. That's the question on the table. And in addition to, so we can't exact what the effect of this would be in the positive. Then there is the other phenomenon that drives this discussion. In my mind, what Buju Banton music is a different type of music from Vibes Cartel. Buju is more conscious music, more in the main of reggae conscious music, whereas Vibes is on the fringes of what's beginning to become normal, which is skin me out and all that thing. You know what I mean? And the edges and the outer edges. And I don't know. We've been discussing earlier. Where our society is going in terms of productivity and leadership, and we've been talking about the weed, the marijuana, and the I call it the illicit use or the overuse of marijuana, in your face sort of thing. Everywhere you are, in the bars, wherever you are, you just light up, I don't know if that was the intent, but it do have some effects on you, they say. The medics say, and I don't know if that has a problem issue as it relates to productivity in young people and disillusionment as it relates to all that. This whole culture all wrapped up in this, and priorities. I'm not sure if we have a clear vision as to where we're going as a country in a holistic way. And the addition of this whole thing, this whole vice cartel discussion.
Say that again. The last statement you just said, Glendale.
I am not sure if we have a vision where we're going in a holistic way, meaning that priorities then in terms of production, creating.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, in terms of incentifying people, young people, in terms of becoming more productive, and I don't know if our agenda is straight on this. The whole collage of issues around this, it seems to be obscure to me.
And that's. You're evaluating the contemporary times.
Correct.
Was there a time when you were sure we knew where we were going?
Well, when I was younger, I didn't have the wisdom, when I was a young kid, like them, to know where we're going. But any of the older ones.
Walk with me. So there was in fact a time when you were persuaded we know where we were going.
I think so.
Okay, and that was when you were a young kid.
I think so.
What's your definition of young?
Late teens,
okay.
mid 20s.
Okay.
Young, early 20s.
So there's been a long time
ago.
that you have been persuaded that we don't know where we're going.
Not a long time.
Yeah,
I'm talking about the contemporary. What's happening contemporarily?
Walk with me.
Is what I'm speaking towards.
Right. But you heard what you just said. You said there was a time when you were persuaded we know where we're going, correct?
Yeah.
You don't remember. And then I asked you, when was that time?
A long time ago.
Right. And I asked your definition of a long time ago. And you said when you were in your teens. Correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's leave it there. Naya.
Well, we were talking about the content of music now. What is but I personally don't want to get too deep into that, because as the caller says, about supply and demand. Of course, we're dealing with a world today which is more explicit and more X-rated. Things come before us. The kids are more obviously have access to all this and that and the other and the Tara, and so You don't tell a kid, you're trying to tell a kid something, and he'll tell you that he knows a lot more than you know, because they have access to it, and so that is one of the challenges we are dealing with within the schools, within, the mindset of young people. They are growing very fast and developing very fast. In our time, things that we probably did not experience until we are maybe 30 something. I mean, the 11 and the 12 years old has it right at their fingertip, and so they can deal with it, they can see, they can read it, they can be informed by it. I mean, these days you go to the doctor, you tell the doctor what's wrong with you, because all the information is there on the internet as to your symptoms and so forth, and the doctor will just have to say, I know you know what's wrong with you, but you still have to come because I need to write the prescription, and so forth, and things are like that. But we are talking about the contents of Vibes Cartel music as opposed to Buju Banton. I can't say much about that. We know what Vibes Cartel is all about, but great mention has been made of the marijuana thing. The marijuana thing has been a social experiment globally. The legalization of marijuana, or the supposed legalization of marijuana, has been a social experiment, and it's continued to be a social experiment globally. If you reflect upon the heightened usage of cigarette back then, it almost had the same kind of impact on society back then. I mean, you were only sexy unless you had a cigarette in your hand. Ladies started to smoke big time, in France and other places, because it came with that kind of mindset that, it's a great social phenomenon, and of course, it impacts. It's almost the same kind of impact we're having right now that they have kind of free up marijuana to a certain extent, But we must be very careful too. We must be wise about when we talk about marijuana, because marijuana has great positive effect, and sometimes we are just looking at the negative. And sometimes when we look at the negative, you may want to ask yourself the question, well, what else they're smoking? What else they are putting with the marijuana? Or what they're smoking that make us think that is marijuana because it looks like a marijuana spliff, But I would like to say, and this I'm sure about, 80% of the people that smoke marijuana mix it with something they call blend, tobacco, they call blend, cigarettes, high life. All these is tobacco orientated, which is highly addictive. It has been said, and there are stats to prove this from the highest medical professional, that there isn't anything to prove that marijuana is addictive, but it's the things that they put with it is causing the problem today. And 80% of marijuana smokers tend to blend it with that dangerous thing that we refer to as blend, braga, and they call it about 100 different names. In fact, it sells even more than the marijuana today. And many farmers will say, they not plant no food no more. They planting tobacco because it's so widely consumed. It's so widely consumed, and it's people smoking with marijuana, and it's creating a problem globally. I mean, I just come back from Jamaica, and I'm saying, wow, I can see it in everyone, and in the area where I was, from 6 o'clock in the morning, wow, the youths are there at that.
And they're burning
their tobacco, to blend with the marijuana. And they ain't going to smoke no marijuana unless they get the tobacco. For some reason, that is what is going on massively here on Island. Look, just the other day, I met a father, and he said to me, "Now my son is in the hospital." I said, "What happened?" The first thing he said, "Well, he does smoke, And I look at him and listen to him, and then I said to him, "Wait." I believe I spoke to your son already, you know. He said, yes, he told me. He told me you spoke to him about smoking. And he told me that you tell him the dangers of smoking tobacco, you know. I said, oh, yeah, I did, you know. He said, yes, he told me that you did. But anyway, he's not well because he smokes, you understand. And so I sometimes like to talk to youngsters about it, because nearly every time when I go to a particular supermarket in Nevis, you find some young little guy, and they're buying this tobacco. They're buying what they call Mr. Brown. They're buying Bragger. They're buying, you know, High Life. They're buying local. All of this is the same name for the same thing, you know. And so we do have a serious problem. And I listened to a doctor the other day on a social program, and he was talking about the Caribbean as a whole. And they're saying that they find nothing wrong with marijuana smoking. The problem is the mix that they put in it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And of course, I mean, that was his opinion. You know, I personally always feel that, well, whoever smoking relaxes you and smoking may make you feel good. Smoking in general is not good. That is my personal opinion about it, you know. I mean, and I can tell you, you know, I'm 60 years old, you know, and I know herbs. You know, I've been a Rastafarian since I'm 15 years old. I know what marijuana is and all the various names they call it, you know what I'm saying? But it enters at serious times in these times, because again, through the medical, not the medical, to laboratory experiments, they have now made it a very potent, very highly potent. You know, it's not the everyday herbs that we know, and that you grow naturally. The herbs these days, they don't even want rainfall in it. You know, I'm surprised to see a man with a herb tree. Rain start falling, run outside and bring it inside. yes. And it makes me laugh, because that's how different it has become now. Because everyone, and with the laboratory experiment, have now producing such a high potent ganja that it does affects you at times. If your mind and your brain is not strong enough, it could affect you negatively. You know, yes. And today, let me say this. The local marijuana that we grow and people used to grow, people don't want that no more. The American marijuana is where everybody will go for. The Californian, you know, the Purple Haze, the Californian, you know, name brand, you know. And it's the same thing when I was in Jamaica the other day, you know. The gentleman tell me people don't want a Jamaican herb these days. Everybody want the strain that come from America.
The one that they blend and they make.
The one that is produced with that very high potent. You understand?
Yeah.
And so, yes, we have a problem.
We have a problem.
We have a problem. So the social experiment that's been trying is proven to be what it is, you know, and it, like everything else, it needs education to go with it. And I don't think that has been foreseen by those who are so-called freed up.
We have a problem, and the gentleman who was on the phone earlier talked about voting patterns and, you know, in people involving themselves in the politics. The numbers are down. A phenomenon that hit me right across the head, boom, was Jamaica's last election. 38% of the people went to the polls.
Yeah.
And most of the elections in recent times is way below, is below 50%, and it's predicted it's going to be dip below 30% this time. This time around, this election.
I wanted to raise something the first time around when you mentioned it, right? You're saying that the people are not turning out to the polls in the numbers.
That's what it seems.
Right, and you just said something about 50%. So maybe you think then we need to change the system, or how the winners or governance is determined. What I mean by that is that the people who run for these elections understand what the rules are, and whether or not he has a low or high turnout does not deter a person from winning and becoming the prime minister or the president or whoever. So if a million people are registered to vote and only 1,000 go out to vote, the winner is the one who get the majority of that 1,000. That's what the system is.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what are we suggesting, or do you want to change the system by saying, for instance, that unless X percentage of the registered people vote, then what? Something like that, or what?
I think what we need, what we are honing in on, is the lack of involvement. The detachment. People detach away from the system, and a major slice of the population, the voters' population, are young people, and they're not showing up. It seems, and we're discussing the deeper problems.
Yeah, I understand that.
And why is this the
right,
case?
Right. So that's the issue.
Yeah.
So how you go about solving it? Because if people are disenchanted and they're not interested and so on and so forth, then we go merrily along, or you put something to change it to get the desired result maybe that you want.
Well, I don't understand. The system is the system, and I'm not sure how much can we change that. The question is, why is it the people are becoming
Apathetic,
withdrawn from the process, disillusioned by the politician? Because it looks to me like there is no genuine and deep-rooted and long-lasting concern. I mean, it's not going on in America. More and more people seem to be voting in America. But in the Caribbean today, we see a politician that seems to exhibit such tendencies when him or her is in power that doesn't seem to be attractive to the public in a sense. We see them like they're living in a different life, it looks like, and they're very quick to exhibit it in your face. And so it looks like the real concern of the everyday people, the working class people, the suffering people, is not really taken on board as promised in reality, and so the people are becoming disillusioned. Again, maybe we are at that era of history where people are looking at becoming more independent thinkers, more independent minded, and realizing that, look, these people can't do nothing for me. You understand? They're just running the big talk shop, and we'll see them in the next 5 years anyway. The little ideas I have that I probably would like to share with them, I tell them, come to my farm, and because I have this experiment I want to try, and it looks like it can be impacting on the agriculture. No, they don't come at all, but you see them in the next government. And I'm saying this because a farmer, just last week can tell me exactly this. I asked Mr. So-and-so, the Minister of Agriculture, not in Nevis, in St. Kitts, to come by, and he said he's coming, and he never showed up. He showed up 5 years after, when election time, and he want him out the yard. Tell him get out the yard, because I've been trying to show you something and tell you something that I think would be impacting, and you never show up. So we have become disillusioned with the politicians. We are realizing that they tend to zone off, halfway through, three-quarter way through, and especially if they get a second term and a third term, every time they seem to be getting worse. And they develop that great sense of favoritism as to who they should deal with in terms of benefit given. And so we are looking at the resource of the country and say, it looks like only some people benefit from the resource of the country. A wall of build, you know who's building that wall. The individual's going to be building that wall. A little gutter, who's going to be doing it. And it becomes a kind of thing. I see it here on Nevis. And that's when I think things are, the time has come where a change will be probably a good thing for the benefit of the island itself, because after many, many years, after many terms, they tend to move further and further and further away from the real public issues, and just a few people seems to be benefiting, and that's what I think, disillusioned by the politician, disillusioned with the politicians because of, after a while, it's just diminishing return you get in terms of the concern that they should have of,
Well, the diminishing returns do happen. It's physics. You throw a ball against a wall, it doesn't bounce back as fast as it usually bounce back over time. It loses its elasticity over time, and it bounces back slower. That's the law of diminishing return. Anything you do, that tends to be the case. You get back less than what you put in after a while. But I think people are sitting on their hands. They walked away from the process. They become apathetic. They say, let me go do my own thing, pretty much. That's what I'm sensing. But my major concern is the young folks. Are they going to be, productive? Are they going to be the people who carry the country forward on their backs, in the sense that, they're creating opportunities, businesses, become leader in industry, become leaders in the community, in civil society, and beyond. That is my main concern. Mind you, I just don't want one to come through, because there are one or two who comes through. I'm talking about the entire cadre of, of folks, because a lot of them would be we're talking about people falling by the wayside and can't even help themselves. Can't even eke out a life for themselves and become beggars. There was a time in Nevis, you never used to have anybody begging on the street or sleeping on the street. I've heard folks, expats who come here and put down, homes here and invest in this country, expats that is. And I would turn to them and say, you've been to a number of Caribbean countries, one man in particular. And why did you choose Nevis? And he became a friend of mine. And he said to me, I've been a number of places and I visited. And Nevis is the only place I came in the Caribbean I didn't see any poverty. There was no poverty. And that was maybe, say, 2017. We had that 2016-17. We had that discussion. I can't say that no. In terms of the loitering in the streets and the begging, that's not something I can say. Say without looking over my shoulder. So there's a phenomenon that's taking place. We have to be aware, and you said the politicians, ought to be in tuned. There is something happening with younger people, and the youth is the future of your country. Egon can't go on forever. Webbo can't go on forever. Myself can't go on forever. Somebody has to take up the baton and run again. It's a relay race. And our parents would have done that. And, they realize the major question with all these social maladies from the marijuana smoking, the blends and all that sort of thing. Our priorities demonstrated in our policy amongst the policy people who are making policy, such as who they choose to be an artist. You refer to him, a man come out of jail, and we reward him. Such in both the cases of bourgeois and vibes. But like I said, there's a difference in what bourgeois sings and what different to what vibes sings. Completely different. They're totally antithetical.
But Buju had his time of singing. Things,
right? But my point, the larger point, is what's being gravitated to and what's being promoted. We passed a marijuana law in this country, in the guise that we would be planting marijuana for export. That was the underpinning that drove this law, and it hasn't happened. It also hasn't happened that we've used medical therapies, marijuana for medical therapy around here in our hospital system, as far as I know, our health system, as far as I know. Somebody can correct me if that has happened, but I've never heard of it happening. But I see it being abused. And like you say, it's not the same when Bob used to smoke, Bob Marley that is, and all these guys back in the 70s, it was pure. And Rastaman used to smoke. The blends wasn't around. It was no, it's a case of addictivity. Making this thing addictive. More addictive. The power of the tobacco So this is becoming dangerous. I don't know. I'm not a social engineer in the sense that I can tell you where this is going to lead, but it is concerning. At the least,
but I hope we're not fighting with the inevitable in a sense. I'm not talking in particular about those who smoke, but we are living in a society like we are the world. We are the world, and a lot of people have their different definition of success and failures. A man feel like you can only be happy if you go to 4 Seasons and got money and go down on the beach every Sunday. A man can be happy right in his own domain and don't go away. You know what I'm saying? And so we are dealing with a wide speck of human instincts and vibrations. You know what I'm saying? And I think whereas sometimes I feel very boring to some people because you will go to a home or be in a kind of social gathering and everybody seems to be on TikTok laughing to themselves, laughing. You understand? And I with my boring self thinking about discussing politics or some kind of social concept and something intellectual and all that, and I feel just useless here because because everybody around me seems to be laughing and
on TikTok.
They're on TikTok, they stick in their phone, you know what I mean, and for a moment I feel socially awkward, and so but there are those and don't fool yourself, there are those who are destined to be the leaders, who are destined to be the doctors, the engineers, and I'm talking about these professions, but don't forget the cleaners. Don't forget those who keep Charlestown very clean and Bastia very clean, because these to me are so much more important than a lot of them who call themselves lawyers and doctors and so forth, because you cannot imagine, living in a society where the town is so filthy, you know what I'm saying? And so we got to and this is the whole thing within the whole social makeup. We sometimes look down on some people, you understand, because of their line of occupation. I think the other day I was somewhere, I wasn't on the program, I listened to the program and you were talking about who earning the money today. You know what I mean? It's not always the intellectuals, it's not always the university graduates. I think you asked the question, look around Bastia and show me 5 somebody who is university graduate who is running business within Bastia. And so we are the world. We are the world, and they're going to be the drops out too, the dropouts, and they're going to be those who from our point of view, on that path of decadence, and we are there, those who feel like they're on the better path, to help them, the strong help the weak, and so forth. But never you underestimate an individual, within the society, his capabilities, his role, the place, and never you make anyone feel like they doesn't have a space, within this realm of things, I mean, everyone, and because the society has become such, that we tend to just abuse even the people who do the most important thing, which is collecting the garbage, you understand, and clean the streets, and we tend to look down on them and trying to be friendly. It's this kind of social force we're dealing with sometimes, I
just want to, one of the things I only wish for, and I really wish, hopefully we will see it. We will see it as we go forward. I want to see more people who are, so-called well-learned people, or, people who come from higher learning, take a risk, take a chance. I want to see that. You went to school, you're supposed to have learned some best practices in a classroom, but that's not practical experience, of course. But I want to see you take a chance. I just don't want to see the guy, the ordinary guy who everybody thought wouldn't make it, is the one who take a chance, and he has 30 people working for him, or 10, 15 person, creating opportunities in the country, adding to the tax base of the country. You understand?
How much per person a lawyer employed?
one or two,
a secretary,
a secretary,
and
maybe,
Yeah.
and somebody else. Maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you? I mean, I'm not denigrating anybody.
No, not denigrating
But
anybody.
I'm saying for the so-called capacity, the intellectual capacity that you supposedly say you have, or you were gone off to school and spent a couple dollars, and come back. If you had scholarships, that is, come back and not to be able to pump back into this economy. You understand? In terms of when I say pump back into this economy, when you employ people make money. They can go and pay their rents. They can go and buy their cars. They can put food on the table.
Good evening.
For
Thank
the
you for
children.
holding.
Good evening again. Over the weekend, saw a report that in 5 years, we may be facing 10 to 20% unemployment. Well, this was in the U.S., actually, okay? And, the spin-off to the rest of the world. Because of artificial intelligence. Now, that's going to add to the problems that we currently have. And basically, they're saying it's white-collar jobs that's going to affect mostly. Right? Now, we here are aspiring mostly to white-collar jobs. And so I guess we have to prepare for the effect of that. But that's really startling. I mean,
Carlo, I could ask you a question for my edification. Sure. The report that you said suggested that there will be 20% unemployment.
Between 10 and 20%.
Between 10 and 20%. Did the report also say anything about what percentage will be unfinanced?
When you say unfinanced, what do you mean?
Who don't have any money from which they would have gotten from a job or from being employed?
No, they didn't say that.
Okay, so what if 10 to 20% is unemployed, but that same 10 to 20% or 15 to 18 of that 20% still get paid?
Well, actually, that's not as far-fetched as it may sound initially, because what they call it in some one Scandinavian countries try this. Instead of welfare and so on, give everybody livable wage. Yeah, that I guess that can work.
Okay.
But how would you incentivize people to work in a situation like that?
Yeah.
If you can just sit at home and get a paycheck.
Keep in mind, I just wanted to know whether or not in the report they made provision for that, and you have explained so. But you could continue.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, productivity has been increasing over the years, and we have not really. I mean, we haven't even, for instance, done something like, well, have a 4-day work week instead of 5, right? Put our productivity gains to work. Everything seems to be, well, more, okay? And so I wonder if that solution would actually work, where you can just say, well, we have these high productivity gains, therefore just give everybody give the people who are unemployed or can't get a job a wage.
And then what do you think will happen with that policy? When I am getting monies because I can't get a job, what do you think, how sensitized would those people, in terms of incentive, those persons who are actually going out to work, what will happen to them?
Well, I suspect they would be the high earners. Now, it's not that they're going to, everybody else, the ones who are not working, going to be getting the same wage as those who are
Right,
working.
and they're not going to say, well, you know something? Glendale is not working. He's getting $5,000. I'm working, I'm getting 10, but I'm working so bloody hard. I think I better leave the 10 and go take that 5 and relax myself.
That's a possibility, of course.
But you know it happens, right?
It can go, yeah.
Okay.
It can go the other way as well.
Mm-hmm.
That if you see where you can make 10,000, you may be incentivized to make 10 instead of 5.
Yeah, okay. Glendale wanted to say something. Go ahead, Glendale.
The livable wage is something that's being discussed right now. I think the Hoover Institute, the folks out of San Francisco, one of those professors came up with the concept of it, the livable wage, because they're looking around the corner, all these think tanks are thinking this thing through. And they recognize that AI is going to displace a lot of people. You know, white collar, of course, as you mentioned, and even within hands-on industry, AI is going to displace. Another phenomenon that we ought to take note on. In the United States, they're saying that the grid, the grid in the United States is going to be impacted. 30% of the grid electrical grid is going to be occupied by AI. So they're looking for power sources to ramp up the power in terms of all these computers. You know, that is an interesting phenomenon. Why I'm saying that is because they're looking at resources, including geothermal, that we've been discussing this for the last, God knows how long around here. But there are great opportunities coming in those areas for country, where you can make revenues. And again, the livable wage is a thing that's being discussed, and how they're going to implement this and how they're going to create incentive, continue to create incentive, enterprise and incentive for people to move forward.
I could ask a question. You've been speaking of late of the revenue and how we're going to get rich from geothermal, correct?
I have not been speaking of late. I'm just merely saying that these are opportunities, and they've been discussing about it
well, let me ask,
ad infinitum.
Let me ask it this way. Based on the expectation from geothermal, it will produce good resources and wealth for the country, correct?
That is how they're looking at it, the Prime Minister.
But you're not looking at it. But you are not looking at it.
I see the possibilities.
So the answer is yes.
Yeah, I see the possibilities. I could see it.
So the answer is yes. The answer is you see the possibility.
Yes, the possibility exists.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. Not so long ago, we also had great expectation of great revenue from another source. You remember that?
What source is that?
You don't remember. Now tell him what source it was.
Well, growing ganja?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so I don't hear you saying that now. What happened?
Never got into implementation. That is what they passed the legislation based on.
Okay.
But do you realize, though, based on what has happened with things like the CBI, offshore industry, financial services, and so on, do you really feel that those metropolitan countries in particular are going to trust us with their data? That they will offshore simply because there's cheaper energy elsewhere? They would outsource or offshore their data?
Oh, that is done all over. That's done all over. I mean, they do it in Costa Rica. Intel goes there, and that's where the chips factory and data mining factories are. They do it in Ireland. They do it all over. I mean, these are just data centers for the most part, where huge machines are stored and kept. But recognize that most of the information are kept in the cloud, so they move it as they wish.
Okay, but I'm saying based on our experience with them, they might. Right now, it's probably not a huge issue, but if it becomes, it's exponential, if the need for that is exponential, I'm pretty sure for security, just for security reasons, they're gonna be a backlash against that, and they're gonna want to just like how they'd want to keep the dollars or euros or pounds.
So let me just ask, just for clarification, one more time. So as we are planning on going forward, we are not forecasting monies from that other industry.
Well, as we're planning going forward, the idea is looking at all the possibilities of earning money through that industry.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is I'm not hearing it.
Well, I've been saying from the beginning that industry you're talking about, the herb industry, right? Was a no-go, no-show. It was almost like foolishness to me. You know, what he's been doing before the legislation, I think it continues to do. There are some people benefiting from it medically, and but in terms of making a ganja industry, no one ever explained and make sense of that to me to convince me that that is in any way possible and something to rely upon. You know. Really and truly.
But you would agree we spent a lot of time.
They spent a lot of time on it.
And hype and all that.
And hype and got a big, group of people sending all over the place. It's absolutely.
There's no record I can point to anywhere that the ganja industry is an industry that drives, like the food industry, like the banana industry, and that sort of thing.
No, it doesn't happen.
I don't know.
Unless I was missing something, I did not hear this pushback.
You're right.
Oh, thank you.
But not only that, we seem to be going full speed ahead. I mean, this is just start the licensing process. So, I mean, why bother if it seems like it's going to be a dead end, and we're late into this thing, which puts us at a disadvantage anyway. Why bother? I mean, the commission, the marijuana commission or cannabis commission or whatever it's called. That's one of the biggest boards that we have. I think it's about 15 people on it.
They just come back from saying,
Naya, let me direct this to Naya, because Naya was part of one of the persons who was promising me. What happened to the check that I was supposed to get from the reparations money?
Oh, well, I don't know if I was one person promising you what?
The check, because I met Ira, I hadn't seen him for a while.
Oh.
And because I work with me. Ira and I came to a sort of communication whereby when we see one another, we don't talk anymore. It's a check, even if it bounces, just a check. So when I saw him a few days ago, he said to me, "Man, Webbo, I didn't tell you we don't change up your thing."
Well, I didn't know a check was given, a check was changed. But the reparation thing to me is a completely different thing from the marijuana thing.
No, it's different, but it's the same result, because what I'm saying is that people like me were looking for a check. I was so persuaded.
Not yet on that.
Oh, so it's coming. It's on its way.
It's a political issue, and it's an issue being worked on still by various countries.
Okay, so simply, because keep in mind my words are very simple, so that I can. So it's still in the works.
It is still in the works.
Work with me. So the check is on its way.
The check can be forthcoming.
Put another way, as they would say normally. The check is in the mail.
In a matter of moments.
In a matter of moments. So keep hope alive.
But you know what? All this reminds me of what somebody on the program just said tonight. Where are we going? What's the vision? What's the way forward?
Caller, give me a second. Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Good evening, Webbo.
Yes.
Good evening to your panel. About this marijuana issue, I realize that the people who are interested are showing interest in it. They are showing interest in it being legalized. I'm listening to the discussion all the time. Not that I am interested or anything, but I just notice politicians as usual. And Naya bears that out, because all night he's talking about legalization. The politicians come and they tell you, oh, you do this for you, but they tell you decriminalization. So it's still illegal. And that is to pacify people. And I'm getting weary of that. People need to just either do or not do. But don't pull no BS over nobody. Nobody asks anybody for decriminalization. They ask for legalization. If you're not going to do it, just forget about it. That's my point.
Thank you.
I think what Carlos said makes sense, and I think that I'm not speaking on his behalf, but I think that's the opinion of the Premier of Nevis too. All this in between and half step and so doesn't make sense. You know, you either legalize it or you don't legalize it. You understand? Because all this kind of cutting and pacing and mending and having a half law and all kind of things, but there's no industry that can come from it, of any great benefit on a national level.
Well, again, there's no track record. You're right. Anywhere that I can point to that it creates a sustainable revenue stream for any country that is significant. Now, Geothermal, on the other hand, has a proven track record as a revenue earner. It took Iceland from being number 28 in Europe in terms of GDP wealth to I think is there number 11 or number 10 in Europe. A country with 300,000 people. Geothermal turned around that country. Not just from its power sharing agreements, but the yields from it in terms of the product from the subsurface of the earth. I mean the minerals, right? The minerals and all that sort of stuff that they've sold. And on top of that, they have deep data mining. Companies like Google, the companies just go there for data mining and use that level of power. They produce, I don't know how much megawatts they produce at this point, but. So it has a proven track record of changing lives and changing economies. And companies like to associate themselves with renewables, especially those kind of companies, tech companies, it's great advertisement for them. Everybody wants renewable. We're getting rid of plastics. We're getting rid of this. They're cleaning up the environment. Geothermal is a renewable. It's not any fossil. It's not fossil. So they like to gravitate towards this source of power to drive the industry. A lot of these tech companies. So it has a serious track record in terms of earning a big money earner. And it can be a transformative plank to an industrial profile in this country, meaning in terms of shaping. So we like to use the word diversification, industry with diversification other than tourism. So it will have its impact. It will bring another thing. It brings high-end jobs. To the market, because of the technology, not only from the geothermal standpoint, meaning working on the plants and all that, but also the associated industries that come in wants to use the power and that sort of thing. It added in Costa Rica from last I checked, when I checked then, Intel created 2,300 jobs, just bam, in Costa Rica because of geothermal. That's just one company. And these are high-paying jobs for the most part, technology. So, I'm saying it has its effect, a positive effect. But certainly, I don't see anything in the marijuana. I just see it as as a non-starter. Period. And like you say, it's not even a smoke. The people using it as like a fad, like smoking, cigarettes back in the early days when women used to smoke, and it was a social status symbol and all that sort of thing. And now they're not even smoking the weed like how we knew it when we were coming through. How before, the Rastaman them and everybody used to smoke the pure weed. They've taken it to a different place. So we have our concerns. I have my concerns. I'm sure everyone here has the concerns about where is this going, and is it taken away from the brain power and the initiative that one has? Not only just the brain power, but you need initiative as well to go forward and to create or to go forward and add it to the mix, the social mix and the societal mix in terms of being productive. That's basically the concern. I think we missed the mark, Webbo, on this one. And the ganja, or whatever you call it, the marijuana bill or the marijuana, whatever, legal decriminalization. We really missed it. We really missed it on this one.
we make reference to the people who may be unemployed but earning money. Isn't that
That's a fascinating story.
something that's happening here too?
Yes,
Where
yes,
we
yes,
find
yes,
that one individual not working, but they're on the PEP, or the step,
the JAD.
or the JAD,
No, no, no.
or something else. You get $500. Are we not giving too much away? And encouraging a kind of
it's concerning.
of laid back, sluggish, lazy attitude amongst us. I mean, when we speak of St. Nevis having such great economy, what are we talking about when so many of the businesses are being paid, their workers are being paid by government?
Yeah.
Well, what are we talking about?
What
What exactly are we talking about?
That's a clear example in my mind. That's a clear example.
And then the whole thing has become so politicized that now, you know, it's because of you supporting the party. And it looks to me, you know, just the other day a friend of mine called me, and he's been trying to get somebody onto the step. And he said, you know, Naya, could you believe this? I call into the office, and somebody said to me, we just taken on some people on the program, but they are all government workers. You know, I mean, I expect the step or the PEP, whatever it is, would be used for people employed in the private sector. But it seems to me like the NIA is another way of getting money from the federal, in a sense, and it looks to me like, you know, there is a falsehood existing in terms of our economic status, our economic.
But before we run out of this one, I'm curious as to this one. I mean, of course, the geothermal now has been an issue being discussed at the federal level, and this, you know, it's unless somebody correct me, they say it's now parked is a federal. I've heard federal ministers say it's a federal program now. Geothermal. I've heard that echoed. Now, shouldn't there be some concern from a Nivijan standpoint as to the sharing agreements? I mean, the Constitution speaks to per and what population size. How do you shape geothermal going forward? Okay, fine, the product is in Nevis. Fine, power sharing agreements between Skelec and Nevlec. How do you do this? Okay, fine. If it's a federal program, do you have the same rates per megawatt that you charge a person? Let's say 11 cents per megawatt. I'm just using a number. All right, it's charged to St. Kitts. Okay, fine, that's fair. It's a federal program, so everybody gets the same charge. On your bill. But is there a larger discussion as to all the ancillary parts of geothermal, meaning the additional things that geothermal does? For example, mineral rights, because stuff coming up from the ground, mineral rights. You're selling minerals or whatever they may come up with, whatever it is. And all the whatever the investment that attached to that, how does that work? I mean, are there discussions on that level as to how does that work? I mean, in terms of, how do you collect? Does the NIA now is in the position where whatever is in Nevis is made from geothermal, is attached to the energy, collects all of it, or is it now a federal thing where the federal government now begins to decide how much goes here and how much goes here in Nevis or St. Kitts or whatever? Does the NIA now have its mandate as usual, as the Constitution states that what goes on in Nevis is in Nevis and stays in Nevis, and meaning collected in Nevis stays in Nevis? Or do we go back to this? Pool things in the federal coffers, and then I mean, I have not heard this sort of discussion ferried out, and these are concerning issues, I'm sure.
These are very concerning issues. The minister was here last week, and we actually went down that same road in terms of me asking him about, because from the public point of view, what came out of the meeting when NIA meets with the federal government. They have what they call it.
A round table or something. I don't know what it is. A meeting.
This government up here meeting.
Yeah.
What came out from the public point of view is nothing. You know, and that's we have been waiting to hear what was the discussion, especially as it relates to the sharing of the revenues and ancillaries or whatever that comes from the geothermal. That the public up to this point have been blindfolded about. But you know, I hope that's not permanent. It would not be permanent, I suppose, because it must come out somewhere or the other as to the arrangement. What the minister have said that they're going to be a bargain, and so I went home and thought about it, and I know, well, who got the strongest bargaining power here? It's got to be them guys in Sinkers, because they are the one who keeps us afloat sometimes. Yeah, you know what I mean. So don't let us talk about bargaining power. You know what I mean. But it is left to be seen, and the Nigerians are waiting, I'm sure, even more than conditions to hear what kind of arrangement. Maybe we are asking for this information far too early.
No, you can't be talking. No.
I say maybe.
If we are in the preliminary stage, and you know they have gotten X amount, $100 million already secured, or whatever the number is from Q80 funds, CB, Caribbean Development Bank, on and on and on, and loans against whatever National Bank is going to issue, or I don't know who they are. My point is, this is serious business. You know, and you know it's going to be. We don't want it to be any vexing issues going forward, of course. You know, between Sinkers and Nevis. I think they ought to be clear about this. You know, and transparent. It's a federal. The people of Sinkers should be able to get geothermal on the same terms of the people of Nevis, in my opinion. My opinion, at the same rates, and they should be able to use. Okay, we are a country. But then you get down.
No, not in my opinion.
I understand my opinion.
Yeah, okay.
But when you start drilling down now into all the ancillary uses of geothermal and where the real money is, the real money is in materials, minerals. The real money is in investments that comes along with it, meaning the types of data mining, whatever. That's where the real money is. The big money is. And you know, data servicing and all that sort of thing. Are we clear on those? How does that go? Those where you understand in terms of
No, the public is.
That is the real big deal.
The public is not privy to such information at this point in time. First, I suppose we gotta wait to see if anything is going to happen, because remember, we're in how much years of discussing this thing, you know. You know what I mean? The 15th or 16th year.
Easily.
I could be more closer to the 20th year.
Easily.
Of talking about this geothermal thing. And so, but I think it's been given new impetus since the present government of Sinkers. You understand? Now, if the government change, I don't know what's going to change, because this is another thing we are dealing with when we're talking about sustainability, you know, the continuity in government, because I realize it's become a thing now that every government change, they shift their program accordingly to where they want to go and where the interest lies, and forget about what the government have already put in place using public funds and the public, you know, everything seems to be. I mean, we see the big perfect example of America is doing it.
You see,
in a big way.
You see,
Trump don't give one, you know, about what's been going on before.
Yes.
And we realize, I've seen it played out around here, and so we got to be very serious when we're thinking about this sustainability and resilience kind of talk that we like to be talking about. Because if government doesn't have continuity, protecting the interests of the people and their money, then what we're dealing with.
You see, I was about to point out to you, we've been down this road before. This is not our first rodeo. And what I'm merely saying, CBI was here. And it became a vexing issue in Nevis in terms of sharing, to the point where one election was won on the idea of fair share. An election was run on the idea of fair share. And because people resented or felt that they were not getting the fair share in Nevis. CBI, and they say make $28 billion come in, or whatever the number is, came in, billions and billions of dollars came in, they report. And we did not see that. I can't see $2 billion spent in Nevis. My point, though, the larger point is...
Hold on. Say that statement again. The last statement you just made.
No, they said that 28 billion or whatever the report said came in for CBI. And, I don't know 2 billion was spent in Nevis. I don't see it. But, and then I've heard people said less than that it's spent in Nevis. My point, and then there's always been this parata thing that has been in the Constitution. So that created a vexing issue. And elections has been run on the idea of fair share as it relates to CBI.
When you said election was run on it, meaning what?
Meaning that we want fair share.
Who is we?
The last election contested in Nevis, the last federal election in August 5th of 2022, the CCM party ran on fair share.
Okay.
As one of the major planks.
Okay,
That's just a fact.
When you finish, let me know so I could ask you something. So you're finished?
Yeah.
Okay. So the CCM party ran on fair share.
Correct.
For Nevis.
Correct.
Was the CCM party the only party that ran in Nevis?
No.
Okay.
I'm talking about the winning party.
Walk with me. What did the other party run on? Did they also run on fair share for Nevis?
The other party did not want to even touch the idea of a fair share.
So they didn't want a fair share?
They didn't touch the idea. I don't think it was the right strategy, but that's my opinion. My subjective opinion. I don't think it was the right strategy because fair share for Nevis has always been the cornerstone of Nevis politics going back past 1970. And it's the history of Nevis politics. It's born out of that. So I think they missed the mark on that one. That's just my position. It's a historical cornerstone of our politics.
Well, neither do the Labour Party in think it's mentioned much about the fair share. Because, if they did, it may not have been that successful. So it was quite wise from their point of view that the present Prime Minister did not mention anything, because they didn't, about fair share in that particular election. Because remember, Harris had already said that $1 sent to Nevis is one less
For St. Kitts.
for St. Kitts.
And that was a vexing issue in
that,
Nevis.
that was a vexing issue in Nevis.
That resulted in the reaction.
And the Labour Party played it very carefully,
Correct.
not to become part of the back and forth
Correct.
about fair share.
Correct.
But the issue remains, I suppose, a little bit under the blanket for whatever reason. Well, it looks to me like the whole government crumbled because of
fair share.
Of fair share.
So, conclusion is, as we go forward with geothermal, the big elephant in the room would always be fair share. Unless that matter that has to be resolved going forward, because we're talking about lots of monies again.
Well, this switch gonna be in Nevis, so we can switch it up here.
Oh boy!
Okay? Because
Yes.
it looks to me like this is something that's gonna become like a surprise, not just to the people, but to government officials.
Because it's not transparent.
Well, it's something like it's being held back to be revealed, I suppose, because Nevis people don't expect that we will be getting 20% of the revenue from geothermal.
Suppose it happened there.
Well, suppose it happened. Well, the government will go down, I suppose, or they need to, or they deserve to. Okay, because that is giving away geothermal and a silver plate in a cup, in a calabash or whatever. The fact is, they will be giving it away.
Good evening. Thank you for holding.
Hello, good evening, good evening. Well, I like to ask, I'm a little curious, I like to ask the two gentlemen there a question. Do they think that we'll ever see an end to this fair share thing? Will we ever see Nevis ever getting fair share? You know, would this ever be put to rest? That is my question to the two gentlemen. I'd like to hear their take on it.
Well, I think this is it. If there was an opportunity to get fair share, this is it. If there ever was an opportunity to get it, you know, it's a resource. It's the next thing, they say, and I do believe it is. I don't see anything else on the horizon that can replace CBI at the moment, or even come close. There has to be compromise on both sides, and on the federal side and the NIA side, I guess. But your question, the fair share issue, is at the apex of all of this, at the top, and it finally has to resolve, because now, you know, as my friend on my left, Naya, say, it is in Nevis. So it forces it on everybody, and the country has to eat, and the people are going to eat from this.
Can your friend on the right ask a question?
Friend on the right is always welcome.
Okay, you said it will be good and etc. etc. You think it will be better if everybody or all sides were clamoring for it?
It would be good if all sides were clamoring for it. But in the end, when all sides clamoring for it, it's how we split the cake, as my friend Edric used to say.
What do you mean?
How we slice the cake.
What do you mean how you slice it?
That's what Edric would say.
Yeah, but you can't lift up Edric because you don't understand it. What you mean, how you split it? I ask you if it will be better if all sides, everybody, were clamoring for it.
Of course.
Right. So what's the part about splitting cake?
Well, it's all sides could be clamoring for something, but the takeaway is where it's at. Because the vexing issue in the room has always been fair share.
I think you're disconnecting me.
But I don't think Nevis can ever get fair share with Sinkers.
No, when I say all sides.
I think, sorry.
When I said all sides, I'm talking about Nevis.
Oh, okay. Well, yes, I do believe all sides should be at the table.
So you will make that case?
Yes. All sides ought to be at the table. This is beyond party politics. Party politics, in my mind, you know, it has no place in this when it comes to the national asset. If a country is going to war, everybody hands on deck. You can't play politics at that point. You can't play politics with your major resource at that point. That's going, you know, no.
I don't think Nevis would ever get fair share with Sinkers, because it's not just the finance; it's the opportunities, it's the everything that deserve to be shared, and you know, it's as I say, opportunities is the positions held and that exists, that sometimes we are kept out of, is the grants that come into the federation that the Premier don't know nothing about, but they come to us all, and there's too much intricates that we are not evenly or equitably, and not just equitably, but just not being handed over to Nevis. You know, it's our sports people when we are talking about a federal team. You know, in sports, they tend to get the upper hand in every way. We are so willing just to take piece of it and feel good. You know what I mean? Just the other day, they had the high school championship. After 70 years, the first one is being kept in Nevis, and we feel so good, you know. And the second one now, I hear he cancel something. They have problem because the people don't think it's well, they want it back in St. Kitts. So there's a lot of things. It's just, to me, a deep-rooted inequality that exists, and we sometimes feel very happy just to get a small piece of it. It's a psychological indentation that we struggle with, and we at sometimes simply accommodates it just
to get along and go along.
Just to get along.
And go along. And, the other side.
Let me take this. Good evening, you have 30 seconds.
Yeah, good evening, Webber. I think the problem with is the species is that nobody following the Constitution. If Mark didn't make it about this species, he'd have been quiet. This thing been in the Constitution from 84. These guys wasn't following the Constitution. And Mark come up with this thing and this step. He know that wasn't saying nothing because the highest authority in the land is the Constitution. That wasn't a bluff.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, Webbo. So again, we're back to where we started. Since 1882 when the two countries came together first, 1882, and we're 100 and something years forward, 140 plus years forward, 47 years or whatever it is, 45 years forward, and we're still discussing fair share. And that's where we are. And I do believe that we have a chance now to finally deal with the matter.
Why now?
Well, Geothermal. You're at the table now. You can't say you've been excluded from the table. You understand? The food is being prepared at your table in Nevis. You're there. You're a decision maker on this one.
Who's got the last word?
Go for it.
Naya, it's been good having you, man. It's been good having us. Talk and get results.
Until there's no longer first class and second class citizens of any nation,
there's always be a war.
Problem.
Rumors of war forever.
This Father's Day weekend at Builders Paradise, we've got big deals for dad and low prices for all. Yes, we've got a massive 25% off store-wide on all discountable items. Yes, 25% off Builders Paradise, already low everyday prices. From power tools to paint, lumber to lighting and more. It's all at Builders Paradise, and it's all on sale. Show dad some love for the gear he wants at everyday low prices you love. But don't wait. The sale runs for 3 days only. Thursday, June 12th, Friday, June 13th, and Saturday, June 14th. Father's Day weekend only at Builders Paradise, where big deals for dad and everyday low prices for all come together. Happy Father's Day from Builders Paradise.
This program repeats tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock following the VON News Minute. Join the Honorable Mark Grantley tomorrow evening at 8 o'clock for On Demand. Thank you all again for joining us. This is your voice in the community, thought that get results. Join Keith Scarborough on Thursday evening at 8 o'clock for Government and Work. Thank you all again for joining us. This is your voice in the community, thought that get results. You all have a wonderful evening.